All right, little delay there right out the start. Apologies for that. My name is Steven. Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. Excited to talk some off-season content today with my guys Tyler and Arjun. Arjun, we'll start with you, man. What's up? How you doing? And are you excited for spring break? Your trip to Indianapolis? How's that going to be?
Yeah, pretty excited. So for those who don't know, I'm going to just go to the NFL Combine for fun. Something I've always kind of thought about doing, and now that's my spring break's kind of aligned with it. Figured might as well just make the drive down. And excited to be back on. Haven't done a live stream with you guys in a little bit. I think since pretty much the last the playoff game. So excited to be back and talk Chargers.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to have a lot of great conversations from a contract standpoint today with Arjun. Nobody knows that kind of business better than Arjun on Chargers Twitter, and certainly I would argue in general on Twitter. So very excited to get his thoughts on how the Chargers kind of clean up the cap sheet a little bit this year heading into free agency. Tyler's here as well, man. Tyler, your background's looking complete, looking great. I see some Star Wars Legos in there. So what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm a nerd, but we're here to talk football, the real non-nerdy stuff. Oh wait, no, we are doing nerdy stuff today because of the cap stuff. So you know what? Yeah, I'm a nerd. Whatever.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the best kind of nerd to be is somebody who loves pop culture stuff and also loves football. So that's what I was told myself growing up. So lots of fun today. Having these kind of conversations is going to be, I think, provide a lot of clarity for us as well as a lot of where the Chargers can go over the next couple of weeks. So if you've been watching on our channel, Arjun has done some videos already, in particular on the Drew Tranquil, Morgan Fox contracts, as well as Trey Pipkins. He's been tweeting about them as well. So we kind of have a baseline there. Obviously, he just tweeted out the Justin Herbert contract extension that he would propose. So we have some idea of how the Chargers could go this offseason. But today we're going to talk about cuts. We're going to talk about restructures. We're going to talk about a bunch of those potential re-signings and figure out a way that the Chargers can get under the cap and then kind of work it around and get some of these signings in with that new number in the future. So excited to dive into all of that with Arjun here. So Arjun, before we get started, I'm curious, what was your general reaction from social media about that 9-year Justin Herbert contract proposal?
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought you're going to have a lot of trolls kind of saying, "Oh, you're never going to win with anything." Like they haven't been able to win with him already, and like you pay him all that money, it's going to be even tougher. But it was fine. I think the general reaction was more positive. Just like looking at some of the specifics of the contract, got some good feedback there about adjustments I should make and adjustments I eventually did make. And yeah, I think the big takeaway for me actually was the Justin Herbert extension does not help the Chargers in 2023 in terms of their cap hit, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But what will eventually happen is, depending on how big the signing bonus is for Justin Herbert, his cap hit is at least going to go up at least like $2 or $3 million by my projection. So we'll talk about that at the end. But that was kind of one big takeaway I had when putting his contract together.
Yeah, see, I didn't know Arjun posted that, so I'm going to his Twitter right now to find out.
A little behind there, Tyler. It's all good. All right, so we are gonna share our screen, have Arjun share his screen, I should say. Get over the cap up here and use their cap calculator, which is a fantastic feature. We do not use the yes word on this show. We're solely over the cap people on this show. And excited to dive into all of that with Arjun today. So, first things first, we do have some cuts to make, and then we'll go from, like I said, we'll go through all of this from a cap clearing standpoint. So, Arjun, if you want to put that up on the screen, there we go. We talked, Tyler and I and Alex as well, at least somewhat, some of these kind of big question marks, and so. Arjun, I'm curious to get your thoughts here. Obviously, I think we can pencil in Matt Filer as a cut candidate already, and just kind of make the easy one first here. Where do you land on cutting some of these bigger names for the Chargers? I know obviously Keenan Allen has been suggested by Daniel Popper and others who have been covering the team, that maybe that's kind of the easiest. That's another easy one that the Chargers could potentially make, at least in terms of clearing some cap space. So where do you land on what we might see out of Keenan Allen and his contract this offseason?
Yeah, so I know I kind of proposed myself that the Chargers should consider moving on from Keenan Allen. The thing I was talking about though is I don't necessarily see the value of just cutting him outright. The only way I'd want to move on from him is through a trade. And even then, I think I've started to come around that like it seems like the receiving class in this draft isn't that great, and the guy that the Chargers might have to take at 21 or in the second round might not be ready to like really contribute year one. So I'm coming around to keeping Keenan Allen just because I don't think he's going to have much trade value either as a 31-year-old with only 2 years left on his deal. But at the end of the day, I don't think he should or will be a cut candidate. I just don't see Tom Telesco kind of moving on from a guy that he drafted and has kept for this long. So in terms of Keenan Allen, I think he's safe unless they decide to trade him for, a date like a round 3 pick or something. And the other one I think a lot of people have been talking about is Khalil Mack. I just don't see that happening. I think when you restructure a player's deal in the previous year, the chances that they get cut in the year after is extremely low. And I think you talk about how much Brandon Staley loves this guy. I mean, he's literally coddled him. Not coddled him, that's a bad word. He's kind of brought him up to the team. Like, this is what he does. Like, this is who he is, like multiple times in those kind of like press conferences and in the locker room. I just don't see that kind of move happening, especially given that Khalil Mack was one of the few people who kept the Chargers defense afloat when Joey Bosa was out.
Yeah, Khalil is that archetype that we know that Brandon Staley wants to kind of, show everybody and say, hey, this is in terms of like production, in terms of culture, in terms of leadership. Khalil is who we want around here. And like, these are the kind of players that we want to build around. So I would be shocked if they cut Khalil Mack. We can talk today a little bit about restructure possibility, but yeah, I'm on the same page about Khalil Mack there.
Yeah, I would agree with the restructure and with Brandon Staley staying, I think you're safe there. And I like Arjun's point, as we've talked about this receiver class and really just anyone you can draft from the first round. We're assuming that they can do something similar to what Keenan Allen can provide. And honestly, odds are they won't. It's not easy for them to just go and do what Keenan Allen did for the last 8 games of the season. Now, they might be healthy all 17 games, but that doesn't mean they're very productive. And you could just easily get, Melvin Gordon's like 640 yards in 2015 or Mike Williams 95 yards in 2017. So yeah, I'm leaning that they keep Keenan Allen. I've leaned that way the whole time, and I just don't think I get it. Like in terms of just looking at a spreadsheet, sure, it makes sense to cut him, but that's like it. That's where it stops for me.
Yeah, I think an underrated aspect, and we'll talk about this when we get to our actual like wide receiver show. But if you look at most of the wide receivers in this class, like most of the top of this wide receiver class, they're all coming from air raid systems. They're all coming from like run a go route, run a curl route, run a crossing route. You run like 3 or 4 routes, and so the complexity adjustment that all of these receivers at the top are going to have as rookies is going to be a lot. Like, I'm not going to say that this is going to be like a JT Wood situation where you draft a receiver in the first round and they just don't play at all. But, expecting this class that's very air raid heavy, doesn't have like truly elite wide receiver 1 prospects to come in and replace Keenan Allen. Like, I think that's asking a ton of these guys. So we'll talk about Keenan Allen's contract situation, how we want to address that. So Arjun, you can go ahead and start Matt Filer off and cut him, and then we'll see where we're at from there.
Yeah, so cutting Matt Filer would give the Chargers $6.5 million in cap savings. So you'll move from about -$20 million to -14. So that one's the obvious one. It feels like you either have a built-in replacement with Jamari Salyer if that's the way they decide to go, or they can go get a much cheaper guy who would probably cost like $1 or $2 million, similar to an Ode Abushi in free agency, or in the mid rounds of a draft, similar to like what the Bengals did with like Cordell Wilson. So I think Matt Filer, easy cut candidate. The second one I want to do, it feels pretty obvious also, but Justin Hopkins. It's weird because the dead money on his contract outweighs the cap savings, but it just doesn't make sense to keep him, especially with the way Cameron Dicker performed towards the end of the year. I know he missed a kick in the playoffs, but it happens, and for the most part, he was pretty much nails throughout the regular season. So those are the 2 for sure that I had coming into this simulation. And do you guys have any other kind of candidates or want to talk about the 2 that I made?
I mean, if you want to offer any insight for Gerald Everett, but otherwise, like that's pretty much it. I think we all decided that Everett was a guy that they keep at this point. So if you have a different, if there's some reason you thought of to keep him, go for it. Otherwise, I think we're all on board here.
Yeah, no, I'm keeping Everett. Again, for like Chargers don't really cut players with like a pretty at least medium dead cap charge. $4 million is a decent amount for the Chargers to pay for a player that's not going to be on their team. And I think for the most part he was productive, and I don't see a way that they're going to cut him. Again, we can talk about Keenan Allen. He's going to save you $14.8 million, but again, that's about a $7 million dead cap charge. The kind of like benefit doesn't really outweigh what it's going to cost them. And the other one, I guess, like the 33rd team has been floating out, which I completely disagree with, Khalil Mack. I understand, you have a pretty big cap savings, 18.4 million, but a $9 million dead cap charge is extremely high. And again, I just don't see the Chargers doing business that way. Plus, I mean, just looking at the 2024, you have a $23 million cap savings for Keenan Allen and a $23 million cap savings for Khalil Mack if they choose to release them next year. So I don't really see anyone else other than Filer and Hopkins getting cut this year. And so those are the only two that I will be making right now.
Yeah, we'll touching on Gerald Everett first. Similar to Keenan Allen, like I don't think you get better by cutting him outright. Again, like
Yep.
even if you cut him, you're almost penciling yourself into we have to draft Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid in the first round. And obviously everybody knows how I feel about Dalton Kincaid, but it's like, what if that player struggles? What if that player gets injured? And then you're looking at Trey McKitty as tight end 1. So I think the league right now is in a place with tight ends that you want multiple guys who can come in and be contributors. So if somebody throws like a 3rd round pick at me for Gerald Everett, I could consider that, but I'm not cutting Gerald Everett outright. And as Arjun mentioned, the cap savings versus dead money, that is a big factor here overall with this team. And Tom Telesco has shown that repeatedly, that he doesn't want to take on a ton of dead cap money if they can kind of keep that player and maybe rework some other things around them.
Yeah, exactly. And again, when you have a player on your rookie deal, you don't want to take on dead cap in that period. Like in the future, maybe, but like right now, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to accumulate dead cap. Tyler, is there anything you wanted to add? Because I saw you unmuted your mic there.
I was actually just curious what Cameron Dicker's contract would look like, because if you cut Dustin Hopkins, what does Dicker's 2023 look like? Is the ultimate savings $400,000?
Yeah, Dicker's like an exclusive rights free agent, so he's going to cost probably like less than $1 million. So it would be, so right now Hopkins was $3 million against the cap, so it would be pretty much be like $3 million less than what Dustin Hopkins is getting, or $2 million less than what Dustin Hopkins is getting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I guess we can move on to restructures. And I'm just going to reference a tweet I put out yesterday. To get under the cap, the Chargers have to restructure money from Keenan Allen, who is a 31-year-old. We can say it now, like majority plays in the slot, getting a little bit older, a little bit slower. Corey Linsley, who I think is one of the best centers in the league, had a really, really good year last year when he was on the field, but has knee tendonitis problems, and that could linger. Mike Williams, who's been good again with Justin Herbert, but it kind of injury prone. I know he hasn't missed too many games like outright, but he's gotten injured during games, left games. We know how injuries work with Mike. Joey Bosa, who coming off a 14-game absence this year, and has kind of, I feel like, not been there from like a mental standpoint. Like I feel like he's gotten a little bit more angrier and kind of just like lost his way there. But I think he's still a great player and he still adds a lot of value to the team. And then Khalil Mack, 32 years old, had a great year this year. But again, do you really want to be restructuring money for a 32-year-old player? And I don't think that answer is yes. So that's where the Chargers are at. Those are the only really 5 players I see them restructuring. There is one more player, and that would be Sebastian Joseph Day. But I think for the most part, the only 5 players I would see them restructuring are Bosa, Mack, Allen, Williams, and Linsley. So,
finally, sorry. Nope. Go for it.
Okay, sorry. So, yeah, so just to reiterate what restructuring means, I'm sure everyone kind of understands it, but restructuring doesn't mean, you just, you take away the cap hit from this year and it just magically goes away. You're moving money into next year. So we're already, creating more problems for 2024, but that's again, just how the Chargers have set up this kind of window. Is they're going to be restructuring deals and having to push money into the future. So right now, before the restructures, we're about $12.5 million under the over the cap. So the players you want to restructure are players that you know are going to be on the roster next year, or at least for the immediate 2 or 3 years. So the first person to me that kind of, resembles that is Corey Linsley. Restructuring him, we would convert $9.3 million of his base salary into a signing bonus, and that would save us $6.2 million against the cap. Any pushback there for Linsley?
So just Corey Linsley has 3 years left on his deal that he signed in 2021 to come to the Chargers. So I'm completely on board with this. I know Corey Linsley has, the knee tendonitis issues, but to me, that is something that you can manage. And I think, he played, fantastically down the end of the stretch of the season. Back half of the season, he was arguably, the best pass blocking center in the league. So no issues here. Like, to me, this is the easiest one to do because it's, you know that this player is going to be on the team for, at least through next season. I would argue that he still probably has 2 more years of high end football, and then we'll see kind of what he ages like. So that's another thing. Like, people are like, oh, the Chargers should draft a center in the 3rd round. I'm like, they don't need a backup center right now that could be a future starter. Like, they're good. They're good with Corey Linsley. I think he's going to be on the team for the next 2 or 3 years. We'll see what happens after 2024. But yeah, to me, Linsley is a no-brainer place to start here.
Yeah, no-brainer for me too.
Perfect. Now this is where we get, it gets a little bit interesting, and this is where, you have to make a decision about who you think is going to be on the roster, right? So I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to, click the restructure button so people can see what the potential cap savings are if the Chargers restructure their deal. So you can see Joey Bosa offers the most cap savings of any player if they decide to max restructure his deal. He would save about $15.2 million against the 2023 cap. Khalil Mack would save about 10.8, Keenan Allen's 8.9, and Mike Williams is 5.5. So because Mike Williams has the lowest, I don't really see them really restructuring his deal. I think anyway he's going to be on the team in 2024 because he's going to have a dead cap charge of $7 million if they cut him next year. So for me, the only real person I see them restructuring is Joey Bosa. Now, I talked about how I think, coming off a major injury and, it seems like he re-aggravated that injury in the playoffs. That could be a little bit of a concern, but he's still a very good player. I don't think you can just replace a top 6, top 7 edge rusher production if you decide to trade him. I know that's people have been kind of floating that out there. Like Joey Bosa will get, a 1st round pick. We don't really know that. Like Khalil Mack got traded for a 2nd and a 5th. Like Joey Bosa, that might be his market coming off a year where he played 5 games, right? So I don't see them trading him. I don't necessarily see Brandon Staley want to trade a marquee player on his defense. If he was an offensive coach, he might be willing to trade, but I don't see Bosa getting traded. And so because he offers this much cap savings, I think they go ahead and restructure. And I just don't think that, he kind of leaves the team given how much he matters.
So you mentioned max restructure.
Yeah.
What's the chances that the Chargers would go full max in your opinion? Or are we talking like maybe they kind of work it to a way like, I guess my question is, because we see some teams recently, like the Saints, obviously it's like, they converted like $4 million of signing bonus to X player. So what, in your opinion, what are the chances that the Chargers would go full max restructure for Joey Bosa?
Yeah, I think it's pretty high. I think just because they need the space and like they have like holes to fill in free agency, they are going to try to create as much cap space as they can. If they don't, so like, the rule of thumb is you normally convert about 80% of the proratable money. So in this case, the only proratable money on Joey Bosa's contract is his base salary, right? So we can convert up to 80% of that base salary, or a little bit more, in max restructure. So if they decide to go something lower, right? Say they only decide to convert 15 million of that base salary. That would only save about $10 million against the 2023 cap. I just don't see that happening because that means you have to restructure more deals. That means you have more players that you're kind of making a bet that they're going to stay on the roster. So for me, I think it's a max restructure, and I think they do that with every player they decide to restructure in this scenario.
So what does Joey Bosa's cap hit in 2024 look like then if they restructure?
Yeah, good question. So if they restructure, his cap hit goes up to $36.6 million. And
Hope it works out.
and he's, again, he will be pretty much uncuttable. Then you have a $7 million dead cap charge. I know this is way in the future, but he will have a $32 million dead cap hit or 32 million or $33 million cap hit in 2025. But yeah, again, the money just doesn't go away. You're just pushing into the future, and
Right.
you're making it more difficult for you in future years. So, but that's just the state of where the Chargers are, and that's a move I think they have to make.
So you restructured Joey Bosa this year. When would be the earliest that you could get out of his contract through a cut?
Yeah, so you probably wouldn't get out of it in 2024. In 2025, you could. It says there's a $0 million dead cap charge. I do think, though, this number is a little bit off. Let me just double check this real quick because I didn't. Yeah, so what actually happens is his dead money in 2024 goes up to 14.6 million, and his dead money in 2025 goes up to 7.6 million. So he's pretty much uncuttable if you decide to max restructure his deal. So he's a Charger for life, pretty much, or at least until his second contract finishes up.
Wow.
So just again, things to consider. You could go the route of trading him away, get a couple picks back, but again, it's tough to replace the production he has, the impact he has, with double teams, and how much attention teams give him. So I just don't see Brandon Staley doing it, and especially in a year where he's not. I don't know if he's really on the hot seat, but there has to be some results, especially in the playoffs. And Joey Bosa is a playoff impact person. So look, we're $8.9 million under the cap, right? Like this is it. Like we have the money. This is wrong. We still need more money because this isn't considering that the Chargers need to sign the rookie class.
Yeah.
And so according to Over the Cap, I think the Chargers need about $3 million to sign their rookie class. That might be a little bit off, but I think that's, if I did my research right, that is the right number. So they need $3 million.
Yeah.
So let's subtract 3. You have 5.9 million. Woohoo. You still need about $3 to $4 million in rollover cap to account for in-season budgeting. You need to sign players off the practice squad. You need to pick up street free agents like Keelan Doss or something. You need about 3 to 4 million there. So 5.9 million goes down to 1.9 million. So that's what we're working with right now. $1.9 million in cap space entering free agency. You're getting nothing with that. So we need more money. So we have to restructure another deal. And to me, the only person they
I just want to get Tyler's thoughts on something real quick here because me and him have talked about the Joey Bosa situation. So at this point, the Chargers basically, as Arjun's talking here, they have zero money still to this point to go out and sign anybody. So Tyler, I want to ask you here, Chargers restructure Joey Bosa means next year is a $36 million cap hit. Does that change things for you in terms of potentially trading him?
Okay. I'm less against it than you are. I'll say that much. I know you're more. I know where you stand, and I'm slightly less against it because at some point, some difficult decision is going to have to be made with somebody. I would think, unless it's just, hey, we all restructure everyone and everything's okay, and maybe that happens. But some tough decision is going to happen. That is a big cap hit next year. I kind of would want to see how Justin Herbert's contract is built into the next few years as well to see where the Chargers are at over the next few years. Because, I mean, if I'm looking at 2024, hey, $42 million. Hey, 2025, $171 million. But let's bake in some, Herbert contracts into that. I'm kind of curious what that looks like in the landscape of the contracts, the cap situation, if Herbert's contract is built into what we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah, because I wanted to ask you because I feel like that doesn't change how I feel about Joey Bosa. Obviously, we'll see what happens there. Maybe they restructure him again next year or something. Ask him to take a pay cut. I don't know, but to me, you keep him. He's a young player still in his prime. So I just wanted to get your opinion there. Sorry to interrupt you, Arjun. You can move on now to the next one you want to talk about here.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to mention. I know a lot of people like to get kind of fancy with, you can post June 1 cut this guy. You can post June 1 trade. It's cool to kind of throw those ideas out, but you really have to know what you're talking about. And this is not like looking down on anyone. I just want to help educate. If you post June 1 cut someone, right? So let's say Keenan Allen, right? 14.8 million if you cut him pre June 1. If you designate him as a post June 1 cut, you save about $2.6 million more. And so people would be like, why don't you just do that instead? Well, if you post June 1 cut a player, you only realize the cap savings after June 1st. So you're not going to get the $17 million, $17.5 million until after June 1st. So you're not going to be able to go out and sign any big free agents. You're not going to be able to fill holes until June 1st. So, everything that I'm talking about is going to happen pre-June 1st, just because the Chargers need the cap space now to go out and get their guys, to re-sign their guys. So that was just a little kind of like,
that's a great point.
Info thing there. So we need to restructure one more deal. We have $1.9 million in cap space. And to me, because Keenan Allen, $23.1 million cap hit in 2024, because I've kind of seen him and Staley kind of not get along as much. We saw the tweets during the Browns game. We saw what he said. Because I think it's easier to replace a receiver's production, given that you have an elite quarterback versus replace an elite edge rusher with Chris Rumph, I think they go ahead and restructure Khalil Mack's deal and make him not a Charger for life, but more likely to stay on the roster. So I think they go ahead and max restructure his deal and add $10.9 million to their cap savings, bringing our total cap savings to about $12 million after accounting for the rookie class and in-season budgeting. So we're at $12 million right now.
We're swimming in cash now. Let's go. What does this do, obviously, for Khalil's 2024 future after max restructuring him?
Yeah, so this moves his cap hit to $38.6 million.
Oh, shit.
So next year, the Chargers, with two players, will have probably the most cap space accounting for the edge room of any team in the league, probably in NFL history, up until 2024. So again, things to consider. The money just doesn't go away. The cap is real. I don't like the cap. You can say the cap is fake, and this is how you manipulate the cap. Eventually, you pay up, and eventually, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa aren't going to give you surplus value based on how much you're paying them or how much they account for the cap in that exact year. But those are right now, to me, all the restructures I wanted to make. We could talk about SJD, but I don't really see a need for that right now, given that they have about $12 million. But that's kind of everything I was talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you don't draft more than one edge rusher in 3 seasons or whatever. You're stuck with two guys making $74 million in 2024 because this is the best shot that you had. And I get it. These aren't terrible players or anything. They're not stuck with bad players or anything, but that's what happens when you don't allocate resources towards wide receiver, towards edge rusher. You end up with this.
So, Arjun, if you did maybe a smaller restructure, what would that look like for Khalil and his 2024 number?
Yeah. So say we only restructured his base salary and we kept his roster bonus in for 2023, we would lose about we would lose $5.7 million pretty much, I think, or something around that number in cap savings.
And so then 2024 would that put him at 30 million cap number for next year?
35.7.
So not a huge difference at all.
Yeah. So again, the 3 million, the margins do matter, believe me, but I just think they go ahead and max restructure and keep pushing money into the future, into the future, into the future. So that's kind of where all the restructures that I was planning to make. I know we could quickly just look at what Sebastian Joseph Day would cost. So you restructure, you only save about 2.7 million. I just don't think that's really worth it right now. So I think this is all the restructures I wanted to make.
So just out of curiosity, if you did restructure Sebastian, what does that do for him in 2024?
Yeah, so restructure him. His cap hit goes up to $12.7 million, which isn't too unreasonable.
It's not 38 million. So
no, I think that is something though that they could, because they didn't restructure Khalil until after they spent money. They went out and signed people And then it was like, hey, like we need some more space to go get like Gerald Everett and work in some other people. So I think that is something that would make sense like down the road, like after you hand out some extensions, re-sign some people, and they're like, hey, like we need to go make, a couple vet minimum moves or something like that. I think, restructuring Sebastian would make sense at that point. But like heading into free agency, I don't think you have to do that.
Yeah. And you could always, wait on it a little bit, see where you are after the first couple of days and make that move. But so yeah, that's the restructures. I'm gonna undo Sebastian Dos Day. It's time to go on to the extensions. So so first, this is from Tyler, right? So Austin Eckler, we have to talk about what a potential extension could look like for him. That is something that could be on the table, and that is something where if he gets extended, then they would save a little bit of money. So right now, for reference, his cap number is 7.75 million. So we decide to extend him. The contract that I would think he would get extended to. So he signed a 4-year, $6.5 million APY deal, or 6.25, when he signed back in 2020. So if they extend him, he's going to get a pay raise. I don't know till what. I hope it's nothing more than like 11 million would be my max that I would give him, and I wouldn't even give him that. But I think something reasonable could be a 2-year, $10 million APY, so 2 years, $20 million extension. How does that sound for you guys?
Good. Sorry, I was typing something in the private chat. Works for me.
Yeah, so the running back market, I think, is going to be interesting to see because there's so many guys up for free agency this year. I mean, Saquon and Tony Pollard could potentially get tagged. Maybe they get something done there. Aaron Jones just took a pay cut. So I would be curious, if the Chargers theoretically wanted to extend Austin Eckler, what does that kind of contract look like? He's kind of he's kind of starting or at the starting point of potentially declining. I mean, I think because of his receiving value, that wouldn't necessarily be as drastic as, say, somebody like a Dalvin Cook, who was pretty freaking bad this year.
Yeah.
So I am curious to see. I am curious to see what the running back looks like, the market looks like.
Yeah.
And ideally, you're talking about the Chargers doing this before free agency even starts.
Yeah, because I mean, Josh Jacobs and Saquon, in my opinion, are both going to get tagged. So that could be something to look for if they get an actual multi-year deal that could help to set the market. But I just think 2 years, 20 million would probably be the place where I'd start. So here's what would happen. When Eckler signed his extension back in 2020, he had a $6 million signing bonus, which was 1.5 prorated. I think if he signs a 2-year extension, he gets like a $4.5 million signing bonus, which would be like 2.25 APY, but would also basically mean 1.5 of that 4.5 would go into 2023. So right now his cap it's actually gone up from 7.75 to 9.25. So that's bad. But again, the beauty about extensions is you're able to move money around. So what I think will happen is the Chargers will take 4 million of this 2023 base salary. So they'll make 6.25 base salary into 2.25, and they'll put that in, let's say, this number, and fully guarantee this. So this would be that's too much, like that. Or actually this would probably be a little bit more. So probably be like, dang it. I'm just gonna, let's make this like 7.5 million, and then let's just like fully guarantee that, something like that. I'm not saying this is what is actually going to happen, and at the end of the day, all we care about is this cap number. So I'm not going to go like too deep in it. But right now, the Chargers would add $1.5 million in the signing bonus part of Austin Eckler's deal, but would save $4 million from their base salary. So the difference in that is about 2.5 million. So they would save about $2.5 million by my projection if they decide to extend Austin Eckler with a $4.5 million signing bonus. Does that make sense?
Yes, but don't ask me to repeat it back to you.
Okay. So basically, yeah, end goal, Chargers say $2.5 million if they decide to extend Austin Eckler with this kind of structure.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying, yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say, so basically you give Austin Eckler more money this year in the form of a signing bonus. You give him another year of a contract for next season. And then this kind of structure would still allow you to move on from him after 2024, correct?
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily think like this is how I would do it. Like this 2024 cap, it would probably be a little bit lower, but they love Austin Eckler, so I wouldn't be surprised if they give him more money up front and just fully guarantee that first year, and then you have a kind of an out in that second year. But let's do this, and you would see the Chargers add about, like I said, $2.5 million in their cap space. So if I did this right, we're probably at like $14.5 million in cap space entering free agency. Now let's talk about the big fish, Mr. Justin Herbert. If you haven't gone to my Twitter, I've posted what a possible Justin Herbert contract extension could look like, just to give the kind of outline. It's a 9-year deal, $463.5 million, so 51.5 APY with a $52.5 million signing bonus. I did a lot of research into it. It's not just something I'm throwing out. I also mentioned how it's not a deal I think Justin Herbert is going to take. He's rec by Athletes First, which is the best, one of the best agencies out there. Guys like David Mulugeta work for them. Like they're not going to take a 9-year deal. I know that. That's just something I would propose if I was working for the Chargers, or if I was working for a team and proposing a deal to an elite quarterback. That's kind of the structure I would go. So what does that mean for the Chargers? Well, again, I'm not going to, add all of these years and go through everything. I just want to talk about what it means for the Chargers' current 2023 cap.
Sure.
So what I think is going to happen, this base salary is not going to change. I don't think it changes. What's going to happen is this non-prorated bonus is as a signing bonus. So the Chargers gave a signing bonus to Justin Herbert in his year 4, and that is $3.2 million. What I think will happen is once the Chargers give their extension, they'll turn this roster bonus into like a signing bonus or an option bonus, and this just goes away. So this will go away from 2023. So that's good, right? We saved $3.2 million. However, there is going to be a signing bonus for Justin Herbert. We don't know how big, we don't know how small. Russell Wilson got $50 million, I think, over 5 years. Kyler Murray got 36 over 5. We can reasonably assume it's somewhere in that range, maybe a little bit larger, but depending on the years, I think that will dictate the signing bonus. So to me, if I think it's going to end up being an actual 5-year deal. We take like 45 divided by 6, because the max number of years you can prorate a signing bonus is 6. You take, let's do an easier number for dividing purposes. $42 million signing bonus over 6 years. So 6 years is referring to, just really quick, the one old year, which is 2023, and 2024, which is his 5th-year option, and then the extension kicks in. So it's a little bit complicated, but basically, if we do a $42 million signing bonus, we would add $7 million onto Justin Herbert's cap hit in 2023. So $7 million, we add $7 million per his signing bonus, which is prorated. We subtract $3.2 million from his roster bonus that we're moving at, like in the future years.
Yeah,
the Chargers essentially lose about $3.8 million on their cap sheet if they decide to extend Justin Herbert. So we do this, you can see the Chargers cap space goes down by about 3.5 million. So 14 minus 3.7, 3.8 brings us to about 10.4 or 10.3 in cap space entering free agency. Did I explain that right?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay.
So obviously this puts the Chargers in a much better situation from a cap standpoint, but I see people like suggesting Jalen Ramsey trades, or go get this guy. Like somebody messaged me the other day and was like, what would you think about signing Jacoby Myers? I'm like, what are we? The Chargers, if they do this, they could add in Sebastian Joseph Day or somebody else, but if they do these things that we're talking about, I mean, you're talking about $10 million in cap space for 2023. And then if you're paying attention, before even adding in Justin Herbert's contract extension, they have $22 million in cap space for next year. So it's not like they're swimming in cash, like they were last year with all of these additions. So just want to preface it.
Yeah.
That's a big reason why we're doing this show today, is because people are still messaging me about like these super expensive players. It's like, let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes a little bit here. They'll be okay. Like they don't necessarily need to go big fish hunting, but they also probably can't go big fish hunting again.
And I just want to bring it up. So I think that's a great point about the 2024 cap hit. I'm just going to undo this real quick. So before the Justin Herbert deal, they only have $22 million in cap space. Now the 5th-year option deadline is coming up. Justin Herbert himself before the extension is going to cost $29.5 million in 2024. So the Chargers have negative $7 million in cap space, folks. Right? If we do all of these moves and don't extend Justin Herbert just yet, we will be at negative $7 million in cap space. That is where the Chargers are at in their cap sheet. That I'm just putting that out there because, you know, like even though we're able to do this, and you know his cap hit will go up by about like $3.7 million in 2023. Luckily, we will be able to bring down his 2024 cap hit and move some of that $29.5 million around. So it's not as bad as the negative 7, but they'll still be like close to 0 or in the negatives if they do the extension. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was a good point, Steven. And again, you have to be thinking in 3-year cycles when you're working with the cap, and that's something that, again, the Justin Herbert extension is going to do. So getting back to this, we're sitting at about $10.3 million after all the moves. If you want to recap that, we can, but otherwise we can, you know, go on to potentially signing some, you know, free agents.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I guess we'll do a recap at the end because, you know, my head's hurting also a little bit with all the money talk. But why don't I'm gonna let you guys kick it off because I think you guys are a lot more plugged in than I am. Who is kind of the free agent that you think the Chargers will be signing back from their internal pool?
Yeah, so I've said this before. I think to me, you have to start with Trey Pipkins. I think some of that is also just kind of, you know, who is also potentially more expensive, and that's obviously Drew Tranquil. So, you know, I don't know if Tyler wants to start somewhere else, but I think we should start with Trey Pipkins here first.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Even if Morgan Fox leaves, you can brain gymnastics your way into having a starting 3-man front that you are okay with. You do not have a right tackle. And nor do I want to pigeonhole this team into taking a right tackle in round 1. So yeah, Pipkins back on the deal. I'm all for it.
All right.
Yeah, and
I'm just gonna. Yeah, sorry. Go.
I was gonna say, I think this also too, like, you know, if we're we're talking about like the long game here, right? Let's say theoretically the Chargers draft Darnell Wright in the first round. Like Trey Pipkins gone, Darnell Wright's in the building. But then down the road, you have to extend Rashawn Slater, you have to extend Zion Johnson, you have to extend Darnell Wright. Like it just adds more things. And I think Trey Pipkins, I think, just gives them some what's the word what's the phrase I'm trying to say here? Some calmness for the next few years because they'll have that locked in, and then you know they can move on from him, replace him with a rookie once you're getting into more expensive contracts for Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, all that stuff.
Yeah. So this is the offer I put together that I made a video on about 2 weeks ago. It's a 3-year, $7.5 million APY deal. Basically, in my contract, he'd only count $3.75 million against the Chargers cap in 2023. Even if my kind of projection on Pipkins and my bullishness on his market is wrong, I still think if he comes back to the Chargers, his cap in 2023 will be anywhere between 2.5 and kind of $3.75 million. So I'm just going to lock this in right now. Trey Pipkins back on the roster, lose about 3.75. So basically, I'm just going to keep subtracting $7 million from this total. So we're sitting at about $8.5 million in cap space right now.
Do you want to just sign a random person for X amount of money so you just have the number consistent?
We can.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Just have somebody like
a place
taking up that 7.5 just for kicks and giggles, pretty much.
Sorrel.
Sure.
It can just be somebody random.
Oh, for how goes just do him.
There you go.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah, this could be honestly what he gets. 166. But why does he go there? What did I do? Dang it.
That's
okay. This is whatever. He's gonna be back with it. Yeah, sorry. Go, Steven.
I was gonna say you can undo that if it's easy. Whatever is easier for you. I think Tyler was just suggesting having a random person in there just so you can have that number and stop saying like, well, they're at 14, but really they're at 7 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this like didn't like go against the cap correctly. But it's okay. I get what you're saying. Like an $8 million player.
Yeah. So Tyler was
Oh,
just
okay.
Tyler was just suggesting
Okay.
you just put somebody in there to count $8 million against the cap,
Yeah, I got you.
just so you don't have to keep subtracting it in your head.
Okay. This should bring it down. It's like not bringing it down by the right amount. I don't know why, but this is fine. Like this is close enough.
Okay.
Okay, so setting at about $8 million in cap space. So next internal free agent to consider, or any other player.
Okay. So obviously they have Trey Pipkins back. They have Eckler extended in this situation. You talked about in the chat. You were the one to talk about the Drew Tranquil situation. Does this change things for you? Like, where are you at in terms of re-signing him at this point?
Yeah, based on what I heard, and I think he's going to have a decent market. I just don't really see a way for him coming back unless they're able to get him for an APY of like 5.5 or less. In which case, I probably would make that deal. I think in any case, his cap hit in 2023 is probably going to be less than like 4.5 or $4 million. But again, I think it depends on like what his overall value of the deal is, and I just right now don't think he's in their plans. And given the Chargers' history with players that Tom Telesco has drafted, I just he's only re-signed 5 of the 45 players he's drafted in his career, which is like a 10% rate. I just don't see it happening with Tranquil. And I am surprised you brought Pipkins up because I personally think he's gone, but I would want him back even though I think he's gone. And I just don't think they go 2 for 2 with this draft class, honestly.
Yeah, imagine that. I just think that in their head canon and the way they approach it, oh, Kenneth Murray's our guy and he's our starter. We'll go get back Staley's guy, Troy Reader, and that's our linebacker duo. Does that sound not so great? Absolutely. But I just think you do not have an option to let Pipkins go right now.
All right, so Tyler, let's pivot here to Morgan Fox and his situation. Obviously, the Jaguars just extended Roy Robertson Harris yesterday, I think it was. He gets essentially, I think it was a 3-year, $30 million deal. So the defensive tackle market maybe kind of changing a little bit. Tyler, what have you been hearing, if anything? What are you thinking about like what a Morgan Fox contract would look like?
I mean, in terms of hearing, it's just such a light rumor. Just this notion that the Chargers, like both sides, would want to get this done, and that's not even a surprise to anyone. I think Fox is comfortable here. He clearly had his best season here. If he wants to take a deal and then eventually get another deal, this is a place you'd want to be with a coaching staff that's clearly worked for you. You can be the starter from the get-go, and the Chargers don't have a replacement right now, really either. I think it's more manageable than Pipkins, but they still don't have a replacement. I just don't know with this whole market. I feel like we're fortunate. The Chargers are fortunate. This is a player on his 4th team or 5th team or whatever it is on his 3rd or 4th contract. A guy who's been cut before, he's been let go by his first team, or let walk, I should say. I think this is of the players that the Chargers could re-sign. I think it's Pipkins and it's Fox, and I think that's it. Outside of some miniature signings here and there, so I think it's these 2 guys because as it currently stands with what they're looking at with their roster, these are the 2 guys that they literally, I think, cannot replace, both with the guys that they have on the roster and really in the first round of the draft. Otherwise, they literally will have to take a body, and it might not be a good player.
Arjun, what do you think Morgan Fox contract looks like if what Tyler is saying is right, that the Chargers and their side are both kind of wanting this reunion to happen, if you will? What do you think a contract looks like for him?
Yeah, so for reference, Morgan Fox, he kind of signed a veteran minimum deal in the kind of like middle of free agency, like after the first like couple weeks with the Chargers. Was like 1.1 million. Had a great year, definitely outplayed the contract. And I saw some people suggesting he might get 6 or 7 million. I'm like, he did not 6 or 7 times his salary in 2022 and going into 2023. I do think he deserves a significant pay raise. I don't know what he's going to get on the open market. I think he only fits a select number of schemes, and I think one of those is Brandon Staley's. This is what my coworker Brad Spielberg at PFF also suggested, a 2-year, $9 million deal, 4.5 APY. This would count $3.5 million against the Chargers cap in 2023. And I think I am on board with bringing Morgan Fox back. I think he offers something that no other D tackle on the Chargers roster has, which is, pass rushing ability. And they are going to, I feel like people are kind of underrating like how, not bad, but like how it's not going to be as good as 2022. I mean, Otito's coming off a significant injury.
Mhm.
Austin Johnson's coming off a significant injury. Like, there's going to be regression, and I think you need to have able-bodied guys. And I think Morgan Fox on this deal would give you that. So 3.5 against the Chargers cap. If you guys are good with that, I can lock that in.
So real quick before you lock it in, what would be the number that would make you a little bit more like uncomfortable about him coming back?
Yeah, it would have to be like 2 years, $11 million. I just think that's a lot, and I don't know. Like, I think he's a good player. I don't necessarily think he adds much against the run as some of the other guys, but it's a pass rushing league, and you need guys like him. So I would go up to 5.25 million, but anything more than that, I think you just have to let him walk and see what he's able to get on the open market. Because remember, no team wanted him last year. So I don't
Yeah.
think there's going to be that much of a change from last year to this year. He signed a veteran minimum deal. So obviously 31 teams were happy to pass on him for pebbles. Is that the
Pebbles,
Sure, but
pennies, whatever you want to say.
pennies? Yes.
Yeah.
Where'd I get? Yeah. They passed on him. So I don't necessarily think his market is going to jump up this much again this year. Right. So I think those are factors to consider. And I think, 4.5 mil per is probably a solid deal for both sides.
Yeah, I think like to Tyler's point, we saw him go from, the kind of systems that he's been in, right? Like, so he plays under Wade Phillips, he plays under Brandon Staley, has a career year under Brandon Staley's system, the Vic Fangio system. He goes to Carolina, and Carolina's kind of running this hybrid like 3-3-5 college 3-4 thing, doing a lot of these crazy things and playing Morgan Fox more on the edge than he did for Brandon Staley, and it didn't necessarily go that great. And now he comes back to Staley's system and he has a career season. So I think there would be some kind of like, from a league standpoint, like if you are running that same kind of Fangio system, I think he would appeal to you. But if you're like, let's say, like the Houston Texans or teams running the 4-3 aggressive front, that probably is not somebody that you're super interested in. So I think he would have a market. I mean, the Vic Fangio stuff is everywhere at this point, but
Yeah.
I can't see him getting like that. Ray Robertson Harris is still in the prime of his career. He's significantly younger and was better than Morgan Fox this year. So
yeah,
I think he would have a decent market, but I'd have a hard time predicting other teams, offering more than this proposed contract for Morgan Fox. Just how I see it.
What are we thinking just in terms of all the contracts? Because I know last year the Chargers were very generous with guarantees. Are you kind of baking that into some of these as well? Like, is this a general market projection, or is this more like a Chargers specific with the amount of guarantees they gave last year?
Good question.
Yeah, good question. I think this is mostly the market. I think with some of these not top of the market players, guarantees are going to be lower. And generally, like, when I talked about guarantees, it was more so the Chargers like guaranteeing the first 2 years of a 3-year deal or the first 2 years of a 4-year deal, just like things that you don't. It's not necessarily like a market precedent. It was just something that the Chargers did. But because this is only a 2-year deal, I think the Chargers will only guarantee the first year, like most teams do with 2-year deals. So I don't necessarily think guaranteed matters as much here, and I think the signing bonus kind of lines up where other players in the market at this range would get.
All right, well, let's lock in that Morgan Fox deal, and then we'll see what the Chargers are at that point.
Yeah, so sitting at about $5.5 million in cap space. Haven't even gone to external free agents yet, but yeah, this is where the Chargers are at right now.
Yeah, so again, if you think that this team can go out and afford a Jalen Ramsey or somebody else, I think you're sorely mistaken. So at this point, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 vet minimum contracts. Maybe you bring back somebody like a Bryce Callahan on a little bit more money than that, but I mean, you have these other external rights free agents that they have to bring back: Cameron Dicker, Braden Fajoko, people like that. So again, these are the big fish that the Chargers are getting this offseason. It's re-signing Trey Pipkins and Morgan Fox.
Yeah,
got to get Cooper Rush in there.
also that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like realizing. I feel like Guyton's going to be back, Parham's going to be back, Scott's going to be back, like
right.
Fajoko's going to be back. Those are 4 guys who are probably going to cost like at least like 3.5 million combined. So unless they decide to move on from one of them, which if anyone, I think it would be Jalen Guyton. So they just completely revamp that receiver room. But I mean, that's kind of see. And you remember that you remember that argument I got with that one guy on Twitter who was saying we should trade for DJ Moore.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like,
yeah, I got blocked.
we can just do with the Saints to just keep pushing money to the future. I'm like, if they traded for DJ Moore, like I really don't know how they would have like been able to work this cap. Like I think it would have been.
Well, you're talking about in that situation, you are cutting Keenan Allen. Like you don't have a choice at that point. But yeah, just for argument's sake here, let's add the ones that we think would definitely come back of the restricted free agents. So I think you can definitely put in Cameron Dicker if you haven't already.
So I put in Dicker. I'll put in Fehoko. I guess I'll just do like minimums. For
Chase Daniel's not coming back. Derek Tuscombe. I don't think you need to worry about that.
Okay, so if I add Fehoko, Scott, and Parham, I feel like I might be wrong. I feel like over the cap's like not accounting for this correctly because these guys all cost $1 million, but this is going down to like $500,000. I'll need to talk to Brad about that, but I guess we'll rock with what over the cap has. There are like I'm sure their algorithms work fine, but this is like adding in those three, and we're sitting at about $4.8 million in cap space. I guess Reeder would be back in this case, right?
If we're not bringing back Drew, yeah, I think he has to be.
Okay, let me just quickly check how much he made this year.
I think he was a minimum guy too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was. So he didn't
probably
play.
Minimum again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why it's only going down by like 200,000.
So at this point, you probably would be at like what $3 million in cap space.
Yeah, 2 to 3 million. I'm not really sure what's going on with OTC, but yeah, it should probably be like 2 to 3.
Rex pointing out in the chat, is this maybe because some of these guys are past the top 51?
Oh yeah, that's a very, very good point. So signing these players also means that some of these players, lead or are past like the top 51. So yeah, this is we do have a lot of players under contract, and like they could like let go some of these other guys. I haven't like really even thought about that. That's a really good point.
Shout out to Rex, man. Appreciate that. Tyler, what other players do you think maybe could be question marks in this kind of scenario after doing these moves? I guess what kind of questions would you have left after this?
I mean, it really comes down to what does Ryan Ficken want on special teams? When Kelly got hurt, Michael Bandy was the immediate next guy on kickoff return. Does he also want DeAndre Carter back? I do think that he does have some swing here. And if they say, hey, I want Reeder, I want Carter back, and I want, some other player, maybe it is Jalen Guyton, I don't know, then that's what they're going to get, because Ficken, I think, deserves to have that sway, and I think has had some sway last year with roster management. So it really comes down to, who does Ficken want back? Who does he feel he can replace? Does he want J.K. Scott back? I don't know.
Yeah,
I assume.
Yeah, I think it would make a lot more sense to bring J.K. Scott back than say draft a punter, because you only have 7 draft picks. Because that's another thing to consider here, that the Chargers need to replace a lot of these guys with draft picks, and it's like you only have 7. So but yeah, Arjun, anything else you want to bring up here in terms of anything restructure or cut or anything else related to what we've been doing today?
No, I think we'll do a recap at the end. That's going to be very long, but I think we covered all of our bases. And the last kind of thing I want to say, like me and Brad put out an article for PFF, kind of like predicting where some of the top free agents on our big board are going to go. I didn't mock any top 50 free agents to the Chargers personally. They don't have the space. They didn't have a need for any of them. Honestly, they're filling depth and trying to get starters. In the top, we're gonna put out a 51 to top 100 or 51 to 100. I only mocked 3 players to the Chargers, and like they're all like making like less than $5 million. One of them was Morgan Fox. The other one was like I think Paris Campbell, which going back at it, like I don't really think he's a great fit, but I just like I had to give the Chargers someone, and I thought they need some speed, and he's gonna be cheap given all the injuries. He'd fit in well with the Chargers, I guess. So this is just where the Chargers are at. They're not. Last offseason was very fun. We're waiting on the big fish news. This is going to be we're catching catfish, not sea bass, something like that. If that's a good analogy.
Literally sea bass. Very nice. That's good. Sebastian Joseph Day. Very good.
Nice. Was that wasn't intentional, was it?
Of course it was.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
He's a Michigan guy. They're brilliant.
There we go. Tyler, any final thoughts here on anybody else you want to bring up?
No, I mean the last like teeter-totter one, depending on the market, is Bryce Callahan. That really just depends on what he gets on the open market. Again, sort of like Morgan Fox, nobody wanted him, nobody signed him. They're happy to let him go. He had a much better year than he did the year previous, but I think that he's another guy that could just like who's really driving up a lot of excitement for Bryce Callahan at that age. I don't know. I think his best shot really is to return if he does. But we've already talked about and discussed they do have sort of an heir apparent in Jaw Taylor there.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would love Callahan back. I think, I think his year is a little bit overrated by people. It wasn't like this great year, like people are saying. Like he was one of the best slot cornerbacks. I think he was one of the better slot cornerbacks. I think he was probably like in the 9 to 13 range. And given that he's going to be 33,
I think 33. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it. Yeah, he's 32 right now. I don't know if he's going to turn 33, but he's going to that's the age where you see cornerbacks fall off. And I don't want to have a Chris Harris Jr. slot year from the slot like they did in 2021 with Staley. That's just those are the things that kill you. And you have to be able to trust your development with Jaw Taylor. You have to be able to trust your coaches with Derek Ansley and Donatel to turn Jaw Taylor into a reliable slot corner, and so that you don't have to spend money on Callahan to kind of shore up those holes. So this also goes back to the Chargers being able to draft and develop. If they don't retain Callahan, it signals to me that they believe in that process. But if they bring Callahan back, it does signal that maybe they don't think Taylor's ready yet. And it's going to be weird when J.C. Jackson comes back and you have 4 corners on the roster. And I didn't even entertain the possibility of cutting Michael Davis because I don't want that to happen.
No, you can't.
I don't. And just JC is not going to be ready. He's not. And even if he does come back for the first week, I'm assuming he's going to, I'm not going to assume that he's a great corner again. He needs to prove that he can play again at a high level.
I mean, as of a month ago, he was barely getting on an exercise bike and was barely pedaling that thing. So we'll see what happens with JC. A lot of people have asked about what you do with that contract. I don't think you can really afford to restructure that at this point because you're trying to potentially have the flexibility to get out of that contract ASAP, depending on what kind of happens with his health. So I know we've gotten that question a bunch of times too. I don't know if you wanted to add anything there, Arjun, before we kind of recap things. But yeah, I think with JC, you don't want to touch that right now. You want to wait and see how he recovers from this injury. And if you need to cut him after 2024, after next year, whatever, I think you want that flexibility, for JC's contract.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it sucks. It feels like from the outside that the Chargers are waiting to cut J.C. Jackson, and it's not it's more of a when, not if, which sucks, obviously, given that he was probably one of the more high-profile free agents last year. But that's just where it is, and I'm not gonna, and when they did sign him, I was pretty excited for it just because I thought he could be like that Jalen Ramsey piece. But hindsight's always 20/20. But after looking at some of the numbers and some of the things that I made for PFF over the summer, it did feel like a case of buying him at his peak and buying him for the wrong reasons. They bought him for his ball skills when you want to be buying players for their pre-ball skills, which is their coverage ability. And it's his coverage ability was kind of average, below average, or his pre at the catch point ball skill or separation stuff was average, below average. With the Patriots, there's people within the league who have told me that he was never a great set guy at not
separator prevention.
Separation. Yeah, separator prevention. That's a great word. But instead, he was just amazing at the catch point, and those kind of things are fluky year to year. Depends on the quarterbacks you play, depends on the receivers you go up against, and so I think obviously again it's going to sound like hindsight, but they bought him for the wrong reasons, and they're going to have to hope he can flip it and turn it around. You take a man heavy corner, put him in a zone heavy scheme. For some guys like Stephon Gilmore, it works out great. For some guys like J.C. Jackson, there's a transition, and I think he went through a rough transition, and unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to really I don't know what the right word is, but play in the scheme long enough to kind of get comfortable with it. So that's just where they are, and I think that's a good point that they probably don't want to mess with this contract because they want to have an out as soon as possible.
Yeah, and we'll touch on Michael Davis. We're getting some questions there for Michael Davis as well. I think looking at next year's cap and things like that, you know, an extension
Mhm.
for Michael Davis should probably be tabled at this point for cap purposes. So just a recap for everybody here. Chargers obviously making the easy cuts here with Matt Filer and Dustin Hopkins. And then we have them giving a max restructure for Corey Linsley, Khalil Mack, and Joey Bosa, freeing up about, Arjun, I don't know if you have that number from just those three there, but I can't really see that far ahead on over the cap.
Oh, it's like it's about like $32 million, I think, in cap space.
Yeah, so it's $6 million looks like for Corey Linsley, 10 for Khalil Mack, and 15 for Joey Bosa. Obviously, if you caught the rest of that show today, you heard about the big time cap hits that creates for Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack for next season.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just where the Chargers are at. And then we re-signed Trey Pipkins and Morgan Fox, and then added in some exclusive rights and restricted free agents: Cameron Dicker, Braden Fajoko, J.K. Scott, Donald Parham, and then re-signed Troy Reader as well to the vet minimum. So that leaves the Chargers with, and the extension, Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler. So busy show today. Arjun, can't thank you enough for joining us and breaking it all down. Appreciate that. Make sure and be following Arjun this week as he attends the combine. We'll have a nice show in a couple of weeks, kind of getting his thoughts right before free agency starts, getting some insight there from his time at the combine as well. So Tyler, Arjun, appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. That's going to do it. We'll see you guys next time.